Hi, Steve. How are
Hey,
you?
Booby, I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, doing good, man. So, welcome to my show on the B2B marketing. My show is like Execution
hmm
Matters. That is my show name. And today I've got my guest, Steve. And Steve has got a lot of expertise in B2B marketing for the past 15 years. He really started like an entrepreneur, and now he's working on Google, and he's worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies like HP and Google and all. And now he's so passionate about B2B marketing, and especially on the topics like account-based marketing and marketing and sales alignment. So today we are going to talk with him regarding the B2B marketing, and mostly we will be focused on the topic the marketing and sales alignment. So shall we start,
Yeah,
Steve?
let's dig in. One of my favorites. How do you get aligned with sales?
So the first question is like in your experience, why it is really important? We have got the three departments like the marketing, sales, and
Mhm.
operation, right? So why this alignment is so crucial for B2B organization? So can you explain its impact on directly on the revenue generation
Yeah,
part?
I can. And I'll start with saying I learned this the hard way and from the experience of it not working. So when I look back, several years ago, I was really focused on the wrong marketing metrics. I was optimizing for cost per lead, optimizing for MQL, and all of my marketing reports looked great. I was hitting my targets and I'm sharing this across the organization. But the reality was is that marketing wasn't actually sourcing any of those deals and we weren't being taken seriously. So through that experience and that failure that I had, I said, you know what, something's got to give here and something has to get better. And so I really focused on alignment with sales. And as a result of that, things have gotten just easier. There's less friction, right? And so having conversations with sales is smoother. When we look at data together, it's much easier. There's less friction and issues with that. And then just when we want to make changes or make improvements, it's coming from a place of trust. And that's really important. And so I think as far as impact on revenue generation, I personally don't see how you can effectively generate revenue if you're not working together. And oftentimes, sales and marketing are not in the same department. Maybe they're under a revenue leader, and that's great, but you still need to work with that team. And really, my advice there is focusing on first customer feedback. So listen to calls together, get on a demo with sales when they are actually in front of customers, get feedback from the sellers that you work with on the conversations they're having, use all that to develop your ICP, work together, side by side on planning for your account targeting and which personas you're going to go after, and then start to map those tactics to the buyer journey. And those things are going to set you up for eventual really effective revenue generation. But it starts with the alignment and just kind of putting your guard down and working with your counterpart.
Yeah, so true, man. I think the thing is, as you said earlier, I think we have to really identify the friction points, right? Because any business, the single focus should be the revenues part,
Mhm.
right? So it is not about the MQLs or SQLs and all this stuff. So if you are real the single focus on revenue part, definitely the alignment is also the key because we are focusing on that single customer, like the ideal client profile, and everything. So the alignment is very crucial between these three departments, correct? So let's move to the next question. So how have you observed the dynamics between the marketing and sales and operation that has been evolving for the past a lot of years? So were there times like when they operate in a different manner, and what has been really changed over these years?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's interesting because I was reflecting back when I first started 15 years ago after college. I was in a sales role. I was an SDR. I was making 100 phone calls a day. And I remember even then, as a sales rep, I didn't have great alignment with marketing. I didn't know what marketing was doing. There wasn't communication. We weren't sharing our plans together. And so I actually think this challenge of alignment has always existed, particularly in B2B. And so, now that the buyer journey is getting so complicated, there's so much noise. And I think ultimately buyers are choosing to self select themselves through the buyer journey and self serve themselves. That's making it a lot harder. And so we're looking for ways to try to optimize that. When you think about that and you go back and you look at some of the reports, I was actually Googling some different reports and I was asking Bard, I said, hey, give me some stats about 5, 6 years ago in marketing and sales alignment. And reports from Aberdeen and Forrester, they all say that sales and marketing alignment was the number one priority, but yet only 25% of organizations had it. And so we've known this for a while, right? And I think just the state of the market today and where B2B SaaS is and the buying journey, we're all now kind of scrambling and figuring out how do we optimize every little piece that we can. And this is one of those things that you can absolutely optimize for. You should optimize for a really strong relationship between marketing, sales, and operations.
So true, man. I think they're really great to see, hear those insights from your point of view. So regarding the operational challenges, like from an operation standpoint, okay, so what challenges that you typically arise when there's a misalignment between the marketing and sales, and how do these challenges really affect the revenue part?
Yeah, I definitely face these myself. It's painful. I think when you experience it, you know it, you'll eventually know it and you'll realize, oh man, we are out of alignment here. And so I think there's a few areas that I'll mention. There's probably a lot more than this, but this is where I really noticed it. And if anybody is facing these, I think this is a good tipping point to say, okay, maybe we need to evaluate how we operate together and what that model is. And so the first one is just general lead management, right? And so if marketing's only focused on driving low cost leads into the database, and then they're really focused on a scoring model that's going to turn those leads into MQLs, and then those MQLs you're routing to sales, right? If you start to see really high rejection or recycle rates, basically a lack of conversion there, I think anything over 60%, you're in major trouble. Even like 40 to 50%, if those are getting rejected, that's a lot of marketing expense wasted. It's a lot of time wasted, a lot of resource wasted. So look at metrics like that and try to understand, are the leads or MQLs we're sending to sales, are they getting rejected? And what are those reasons for getting rejected? And that'll tell you if you're missing the mark. Maybe your ICP is off, maybe some of your targeting is off, or you're just in the wrong channels. The second one, I don't hear this one often, but I think the idea of capacity planning with sales is something that marketing needs to lean into more. And if you think about this, if marketing is focusing on cost per lead and just driving maximum volume up at the top of the funnel, if you're not communicating and forecasting what that is with sales, it's going to fall apart, right? If you send sales 5,000 MQLs and they can only handle 1,500, there's going to be a problem, right? We're going to have a backlog, and then the feud is going to begin because marketing is saying, we're sending you all these high quality leads, and sales is like, no, they're junk, they're garbage, and you're sending us too many and we can't keep up. And then right there, the trust is broken, and you're kind of doomed from there. And then the last one I think is fairly obvious, but if you're a quarter or two into your demand gen or ABM programs, and you're starting to see these backlogs come from sales, they're not able to get through all of the leads, you're starting to see conversion rates decline, you're ultimately going to start missing your revenue targets. And that's the key. If you get that far, it's really too late. You've sort of let this thing simmer for too long. So I like to first look at that handoff between marketing and sales and try to get really deep on, is that working? Are we sending the right quality to sales? Is sales have the right capacity to be able to work those leads that we're sending? And if you start to see something fall off there, and then get on that, because eventually that's going to just materialize into poor revenue metric and pipeline growth. So yeah, you want to avoid that at all costs if you can.
So true, man. I think in my previous consulting gigs, I remember a lot of meetings. People discuss about all these, the number of MQLs collected, number of SQLs, and after that, probably after some 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they dump a lot of Excel data. I mean, like a lot of these SQLs, which is not being even addressed. As you said, the word garbage,
Mhm.
right? So that was like it was really happening in the company. So I'm just wondering how much money the company was investing to generate probably those MQLs or probably those SQLs and all this stuff,
Exactly.
right? So the huge wastage of money, because it is not, it is something like not having a clear idea about ideal client profile and not having this kind of perfect alignment over there. So that is really wasting a lot of money on the company's point of view.
It is, yeah, yeah.
So
And
true,
to
man.
that point, you should do that calculation. If you're seeing some of these issues, do that calculation. And if you see that dollar amount, that should wake you up, right? And just think what else you could do with that. You're basically throwing it out the window if you're not.
Absolutely, man. I felt when I saw that data, a long list of data, they were just throwing like a garbage. They were saying like people are not responding. So my mind was like thinking about that entrepreneur, how much money he has invested in, like in terms of resources, in terms of the marketing tools and all this stuff, right? I was thinking about him.
Yep.
So, so let's move to the next question, Steve. So when aiming for this marketing and sales alignment, right? So what KPIs or the metrics, I mean, like that you think like the company should really focus so that the marketing, sales and operation are all driving towards the same goal, that is the revenues.
Yeah, I love this question, and we could probably do a whole show on just this piece. But having alignment on the data and the KPIs is so important. And ultimately, I think you're going to want to look at KPIs throughout the buyer journey and along the funnel. But I'll give you kind of three categories that I think are a good place to start. And the first one is lead velocity. So that's a bit what we were just talking about. So how quickly are leads moving through that funnel, and are they actually getting picked up by sales, right? And so you can look at like conversion rates there as well. But I think this is an indication of quality, because if things are moving freely and within a baseline that you expect, it's a good high level indication that, okay, we're acquiring the right folks within our ICP. We're qualifying them for sales. We're getting the right information, and sales is having the right conversation. So we're starting to feel good about that. So I'd start there, and then getting a little more specific, looking at conversion rates. So we were talking about lead to MQL conversion rate. I don't personally really look at this much anymore, because you can manufacture that in marketing. I could lower my lead score and juice up my MQLs. I could hire it and then the MQLs would lower. And so I think go a little further into the funnel and look at the MQL to SQL conversion rate, or whatever that metric is for you, of when you in marketing send a lead to sales and then they essentially deem that lead as qualified. Look at that conversion rate as well as into the next steps. Is SQL, what is your next step? Is it stage 0? For me, I like to actually look at stage 1, because oftentimes stage 0 is a cleanup stage. There might still be some BANT qualification happening. But if it gets to stage 1, now we're talking about a real opportunity here. We know that there's budget. We've got the right person. It's the right account. It's within the ICP, right? And so looking at those and tracking that over time is really important. And then as you get into revenue, we want to look at pipeline health, right? So this really includes the revenue, but we want to look at pipeline velocity. How is pipeline traveling through the funnel? How much pipeline is traveling through at any given point? And then how quickly is that pipeline progressing through those different stages, ultimately into a converted customer stage? And then I like to look at average deal size as well. I think that's important to just understand where the market's at. Are you selling bigger deals, smaller deals, depending on what your target account list? And then lastly, churn. So how much pipeline is flowing through the funnel and ultimately falling out? And then really understand, why is that, right? Is it, do we get the wrong person? Is our account targeting off? Is there something wrong with the positioning or the messaging of the product? But that kind of gets you started along the whole funnel, basically. You want to understand what are the KPIs that will work for you and your business throughout that funnel, so you can determine the overall health.
Excellent, man. Good. So let's move to the next question. Like right now, we have got these three departments there, right? So how do you facilitate like there is a consistent and a transparent communication between these three departments? Because we can talk about this marketing, sales, and operational alignment, right? But the thing is, we have to bring that in reality. So what do you think like the best tools or platforms that you find particularly effective for this alignment?
Yeah, this is something I've realized, is that communication is so key. And I actually found this report from Salesforce. They did a state of marketing and sales 2023 report, and the number one challenge was lack of communication. Almost 50% of the folks that they surveyed said that communication was an issue. And so you have to look at that and think, wow, half of the businesses in this study are not getting communication right. And for me, I've been thinking about this in a sense of the human problem with this. We all, as humans, are trying to communicate and make sense of the world around us. And we're all flawed in a variety of different ways. Some of us are really good communicators, some of us are not, and most of us probably fall in the middle. So that's really difficult. But ultimately, at work, you've got to get past it. You got to figure it out. And you said, what kind of tool or platforms? I think that it really starts with this idea of human communication, and how are you going to do that? How are you going to use that to build alignment? And so I thought about this, and I think really the first step is starting at the top. I think you can get some traction from a bottoms up perspective, but ultimately you need the leader or the leaders of marketing, sales, and operations to align, and they need to talk regularly, and they need to be motivated to improve the efficiency between their teams. If they're not, I think it's going to be an uphill battle, because you're always going to be facing leadership that doesn't necessarily agree with this priority. And then from there, you can get into some of the process. And I love this stuff because there's a variety of things you can do, but a couple ideas that come to mind are, you need some kind of weekly status huddle between the groups, and have a strict agenda for that and manage that rigorously. And so I like to ask, what happened last week, or what happened in the last 2 weeks, what's going on in the future too, and then what are blockers? And you can get through that pretty quickly. You don't have to take a lot of people's time. And that's just more qualitative, right? Then I think you need the quantitative syncs. So, say a bi-weekly performance huddle where you're actually looking at some of these metrics we've been talking about, and this should be just the core teams. So, like the day-to-day teams that are in the mix, they're running the campaign, they're building life cycle marketing campaigns. You've got your sales managers in that meeting, and this is really where the kind of the sausage gets made, right? And then lastly, you need some kind of monthly pipeline review with the executive team, or some kind of monthly review with that team, so that you can up level what's going on and share some of the success and wins you've had, the blockers, and then also what's not working, and where you might need resources, where you might need help, what you want to be working on. And again, that's where you get that executive support, hopefully from those leaders, and they agree because one of their initiatives is to improve that alignment between the teams.
Excellent. I think the tools can help you a lot. That can give you a lot of insights, like about what's really happening for the past week, the past month. You can, but the thing is that we are all humans. We have to come together. We have to follow a meeting, and we have to collect the data. We have to analyze it, and we have to talk together, right? Otherwise, things are not going to work. Because at the end of the day, as we said, execution.
Yeah, and the tools, absolutely, I agree. I think there's some great tools out there, and it's ultimately figuring out what is the gap in your communication that a tool might be able to solve, or maybe it's a gap in your reporting or attribution, something like that. But yeah, I tend to think there's an abundance of tools, and it's really about sifting through and figuring out which one is going to solve that problem that you have.
Yeah, in market there are a lot of tools there. The thing is, we have to choose the right ones. But the more than that, I would say like we have to talk. I think the frequent meetings, as you said, we have to follow that religiously every single week. That is more important than the tools.
Yeah.
So given the importance of the sales in driving revenue, right? So how can the marketing and operation best support this no sales team for the sales enablement? So how does this support, like, which is going to result in enhanced revenues in the future?
Yeah. Sales enablement is interesting. I think it's starting to evolve a bit where marketing has typically been in a reactive support role. And I think this is a place where marketing can get more proactive with the goal of increasing revenue. Because again, it comes back to alignment. If marketing is proactive, with sales is educated on what's going on, and we can ask questions and work together. And so I think there's a few ways to support sales today, and these should be iterated on for sure, depending on how your organization operates. But the first is content. That's kind of the traditional sales enablement role for marketing, right? And so within that content, I think now marketers are starting to think about how can we make our material more modular, so that depending on the persona or the different account, or maybe the industry that sales is talking to, they can customize that narrative for that individual at that company and then show up in the best way possible. I think that's a better way to go versus the historical, here's your pitch deck. Share this to everybody, right? That's not getting anyone excited. And so I think being more flexible there is key for marketing. And then the second is knowledge sharing. And this one I find interesting because I think marketing almost creates too much content. So they create all of this content, and then they even have a tool to manage all that content, and they're asking sales, go into this tool, and every time you need something, search this asset manager, etc. It's just so much, and it's so hard for sales to go through that. Put yourself in the seller's shoes, right? They're just trying to have a conversation with this prospect. And so I think marketing can take a step back, educate sales on what is happening right now, what initiatives are in market, what positioning is working well, what big moments is marketing planning, and then anchor the content to that. And so the two teams are working in a more cyclical way along the calendar year and supporting the teams, right? And that gives sales an opportunity to give feedback as well. And then the other thing for sales enablement, which we were just talking about, was tooling. I think that marketing needs to have a point of view here. I think that if sales and the sales ops team is bringing in new tools or new software, it should be a conversation that marketing's invited to. Especially you think about tools like SalesLoft, like Zoom Info for prospecting, and even Gong. There's these tools that are unlocking amazing insights on the sales side, but marketing should care about those insights as well. That's the customer, right? That's where we're getting the most useful feedback. And so I would love to see marketing lean more into that, and even lend a hand, right? SalesLoft and the cadence functionality that you can do. That's something marketing should jump into. They should work with sales, figure out what are the right cadences, what's the right message positioning, and offer up that help.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's not the tools like how we are going to use the tools
Mhm.
together. That really matters.
Yeah, yeah, together. That's the
Absolutely.
key, together.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, Steve. So let's move back to the next question. So what do you think? Once the alignment is achieved, I know it's not like a set and scenario,
Mhm.
right? So how do you ensure like the continuous improvement and adaptability among these departments as the market conditions change all the time?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's definitely not a set it and forget it approach. I'd hope that if the two or three teams, depending on how you set it up, if they have integrated each other into their planning, and their day-to-day priorities and how they communicate and the cadences of their meetings and whatnot, then you're in a good spot at least to maintain that alignment. So I think that's key. It's establish that alignment is a goal. We, our teams together agree that we're going to pursue this goal not just for a month or a quarter, like this is going to be part of what we do. And then from there, start to have the typical business conversations together, right? So account planning, tactical planning, setting targets, coming up with OKRs and KPIs and such, aligning budget and resources. Do that stuff together, and I think over time it starts to get a lot easier to work together because you start to figure each other out. You start to adapt your processes to each other's departments, and you're communicating more regularly. And then something tactical that I've found works really well is just getting aligned through data. So if you think about the meeting cadence we were talking about, where you're going to have a kind of tactical view of the funnel, then you're going to have an executive view of the funnel. If you're not aligned on the data and the way that you define that data, what the KPIs are, what they mean, what ultimately you will do with that data, how you will react to it, I mean, to be honest, I think you're really at a disadvantage because you're going to sense the friction in that meeting and in those conversations because you're not aligned on the core thing, right? The data. And so that's always one place I like to start is let's look at the data. Is our data a mess, or is it clean? Do we all agree on the definitions and where that data comes from and how we want to use it, et cetera? I think that can be a strong place to start. And then the data persists forever, basically. That's one way to kind of keep the team stuck together.
Yeah, that's so important. In my past consulting gigs, we had this lot of data. Like nobody knew how to process this, like how to view in a proper dashboard point of
Mm.
view. Like because the thing, the marketing didn't had any visibility towards what exactly the sales is doing. For example, they'll be having a lot of website leads, and after that, the sales team not handling it properly. At the end of the day, they'll be supplying around some 50 leads on the website. But the thing is, we don't have any visibility after that. What's really happening on that part? So it is not only about having this data, it's all about having a proper dashboard through these kind of tools like the CRM and all this stuff. So that's where the tools are going to help you.
Yeah, yeah,
So true, man.
I
So,
agree. Yeah.
so I think we have arrived at I think the final part, the final question of this podcast. So the thing is, so for B2B companies who are really struggling with these alignment issues, their impact really happening on the revenue
Mhm.
part. So what could be the immediate steps that that you would recommend so that they can take? Okay, and do you think there's any some resources or methodologies that you would suggest so that they can explore that?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the first thing I'd say is I know we've gone through a lot here. It can be a bit overwhelming to think that you need to go and implement all of this right away. I think really the key is just taking that first step and saying, okay, alignment is going to be a priority. This is important for us. And then start small, have a plan for how you want to improve that. I'm also a fan of sort of starting at the end. So if you can envision what you want that alignment to look like in 6 to 12 months, think about that and then work backwards. What do you need to get there? And you start to kind of break down the processes. And so if you're at that stage, I think you can kind of assess where you are in your current situation. Have a look at some of the numbers we talked about and the metrics, and rate your situation on 1 to 5, right? So one being the worst, if you're a little bit closer to a one, then maybe your first step is actually to just go set up some time with sales. Have an interlock, tell them that this is important to you, show them the vision for what you want to achieve, why you think alignment is going to unlock more revenue for the business, and maybe some of the areas you think that are lacking alignment that you want to work on together. And just start there. Have that conversation, again, like kind of put your guard down, go into it with an open mind, and just try to figure out how can we best work together. And then on the flip side, if you're a little bit more mature and your company has had a good relationship across these groups, maybe you have some good alignment, but you feel there's some areas that you want to tighten up along the way, maybe the cadence in which you review data. That's something that I think lean into some of these topics we've talked about marketing should be sharing their marketing calendar with sales, getting feedback from sales. There should be cadences in which the teams are reviewing call data, analyzing how folks react to demos, maybe what's coming through the website, the quality of leads. Start to dig in a little bit more. But ultimately, I think every business is going to be at a different point in their journey. So it's really about that first understanding that, okay, is alignment something that we're going to build into the philosophy of our teams? If so, we're going to build really clear goals for that alignment, both qualitative and quantitative, because alignment at the end of the day, it needs to drive the additional revenue like we're talking about. And so have that goal in place and then start to track it, right? And start to test out some of these ideas and see what works for your organization.
Yeah, Steve, like exactly as you said, it purely depends upon if the company, the state they are in. I mean, for example, it might, if it's like a 1 to 10 employees, it'll be an entirely different scenario over there, right? And if it's like a company which is spanning more than some 200 employees or 500 employees, definitely the marketing and sales alignment will be on a different stage there. So purely depends upon the state they are in, and they have to adapt the strategy which is really that's suited for them. Absolutely. So I think it's something like a great stuff, man. I think even I learned a lot from you. I think the past 30 minutes I asked a lot of questions, and from that I learned a lot, Steve. So thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you. No, this is great. Thanks for having me and getting the juices flowing this morning and thinking about sales and marketing alignment and driving revenue. It's hopefully it motivates folks and they can try some of this themselves and bring it back to their companies.
So for anyone watching this show, like if you want to do the proper B2B marketing with the best marketing and sales alignment, definitely you can contact Steve. I'm going to include the Steve's LinkedIn profile with his YouTube video description, and also he is very good on account-based marketing part. So definitely you can contact him on that part as well. So thank you so much, Steve. I think we have come to the conclusion of this podcast. So if you want to say anything to the audience, you can say at this point.
I would just say if you made it this far and you've been listening, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm also looking for feedback myself. I'm always trying to improve. So if you've heard this and you've got ideas or you've got questions, reach out and would love to have a conversation.
Excellent, man. So thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.